Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, as you can see here, we have winter storm watches across 16 separate states here across the middle part of the United States up into the eastern Great Lakes, including an ever-expanding area and through here of winter storm warnings. What's important about this is that this precipitation that's coming through, including some very heavy rains in the south here, where we've already got flood watches out for this part of Texas, well, this system's going to come through and really start to work on the fact that the last 30 days has been very dry across several parts of the southern plains into the Midwest, right in through here especially. The heavier rain is going to settle into this area, helping to correct some of the longer-term issues we've seen with drought. But just to make a point here, the lack of a subtropical jet stream has what's kept much of the West, especially California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, away from having above normal precip. There's still an area right in through here where we got to add quite a bit more as well to kind of pick things back up. When we look at this compared to average or the long-term numbers here, we can look at the month-to-date precipitation ranks by climate district. And again, our biggest problem throughout the month of January was blocked flow that sent the jet stream doing something like this. That's a lot of upper level convergence that gives you subsidence, multiple high pressure cells that went through here. And with no subtropical jet to really speak of here, we've not had any southwest flow, which has really eliminated the best chances for rains here in the west, where some climate reporting districts now have had their driest January on record. Okay. Now, as we look at this another perspective, we can talk snow, and this is the total accumulated snowfall so far throughout this cold season. And we're going to start to see some major improvements in this area with this next system that's going to be coming through. But that still leaves a part here of the northern plains that's missed out on a lot of the snow as of late. Unfortunately, some of this is going to come through in the form of ice a little bit farther to the south, causing problems. But when you compare our total accumulated snow to what we've seen so far this year, this map shows you percent of normal. So there's a lot of places here where the heavy snow is going to be falling in the next about 45 hours that really desperately needs to pick up quite a bit. Now, before I get into that, really briefly, I want to talk to you about the longer range pattern, which is still largely dominated by stuff going on in the tropics. The La Nina is fading pretty quickly, especially in the Central Pacific Ocean. Again, that's anticipated. And what it's doing is it's allowing the MJO to really reposition itself back over into the Indian Ocean. And that's important. Some of the new long-range data just came out suggesting that instead of what I thought last Thursday, which is where the MJO was going to try to come out into phase 5, we now see that the forecast may even take it to higher amplitude phase 3. And that is definitely in the Indian Ocean versus being over by Australia. Now, what are the implications of that teleconnection? Well, historically, when there is a La Nina, albeit fading, in the month of February, MJO phase 3 tends to favor deeper troughs anchored right here, almost in British Columbia. And they nose out into the Gulf of Alaska. And what's most important about this is to see whether or not we can actually push a ridge back to the Aleutian Islands. All month long in January, the models attempted to do this and failed. And so this would really take a major reset in the tropics, like a phase 3, to occur. Now, I still think the most dominant teleconnection is what's happening there. And should we get that to occur, this will increase precipitation from Northern California through the Northwest and still produce a pretty active storm track through the middle section of the United States, and even through the Canadian prairie. We'll get some more of those clippers. Now, we see over here that there is a ridge that tends to favor over the southeast that just turns things to the north pretty quickly. But this will also be quite interesting. This high over a low block that's here in the North Atlantic should the MJO phase 3 set up. And at this point, what are some of the longer range forecasts calling for? Well, if we look out there week 3 to week 4, we can see the European model, the CPC, this is the United States, still has a very La Nina-ish / MJO phase 3 look. Now, what do I mean by that? See the colder air forecast here? This extends into the Canadian prairie. That would be indicative of a trough sitting here. And ridging over the southeast could keep this area favoring more warmer days. Again, this is the week 3, week 4 forecast getting out through February 12th through the 25th. I agree with this as being an active corridor. Same with this part of the Northwest. Do we actually get the trough far enough south to return normal precipitation to Northern California? That will be absolutely critical to this pattern. And do these troughs dig enough into the southern plains to keep relieving that area? Now, the long-range European was also just released, and it goes out a bit farther. Let's go from February 15th through March 15th. And what we see here is that the longer-range European fails to take the ridge that's making this drier weather here far enough to the west. That's why this is drier. That's why we're drier here. but we keep this storm track running over that ridge doing something like this, keeping this whole section of the country getting into the eastern Canadian Maritimes here with above average precipitation. The models are a bit overdone on the dryness south, and we just need to see, can we get the troughs to actually curl around that cold water in place here to come through the United States, develop some sense of southwest flow, helping to push from the Red River Valley of the South over to the panhandles, better moisture in that area. That will be the number one thing I want to be watching in the longer term. Now, we're going to get brand new long-range data this weekend. Can't wait to share that with you next week and next week videos. But before all that occurs, we got to come back to the kind of the monster storm system that's running through the midsection of the United States. And it is a unique one. A couple of ways to look at it right away. Snow. This is the probability of getting at least 3 inches of snow. What's going on here is there's a clipper system that's going to roll up toward the Hudson Bay and leave a front right in through here. And along that front, we're going to get a special type of weather pattern called deformation. I'll explain to you what that is in a few moments. But this is what the probability looks like for getting 3 inches. Big section here, 90 to 100%, right? This is 6 inches. Again, 2 corridors we're watching right in through here, all the way from this part of Oklahoma clear to like London, Ontario, and then on up here into Quebec. That's a big swath of heavy snow. And this is the probability of getting a foot. And that's why we've already seen the issuance of winter storm warnings out for this area. But that would be the corridor through which we're going to see the best chances of seeing those very heavy snowfall totals. I'm also very concerned about the potential for ice to the south of this, from eastern Oklahoma through northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, southern Illinois, even into southern Indiana and Ohio. There is going to be a lot of overrunning in this area, giving us a setup where there's very cold air at the surface at sub-freezing, while above the surface, about anywhere between 1,000 to 5,000 feet, there's going to be temperatures well above freezing, giving us that melting layer we need to get the surface sub-freezing layer to freeze that super cooled water. This is the probability of getting at least 1/10 of an inch of ice. So I'm very concerned into this corridor. Let's take a look at it. This is what the jet stream level pattern is going to be doing. It's important to see that coming across the Pacific, the flow splits into the Gulf of Alaska. See that? And that split means that there's nothing behind this system shoving it east. So the flow coming into the west is out of the north. You then see weaker flow through the base of the trough, and then this right here and here are not pulling this trough forward, which means this is setting up Tuesday. It's going to last into Wednesday and Thursday and eventually get east on Friday. This is a multi-day event. And what it's going to give us is this just incredible deformation zone. That is a place where you end up getting winds that come out of the south, curling around the upper level trough here. Winds out of the south, curling around the mid-level ridge there. And the Arctic air comes around like this and like that, and you get this zone of deformation where you have what's called frontogenesis, the building of a front. The Arctic air slides underneath this while the warmer air runs over the top, giving us the mixed precipitation. It will be all along this deformation zone and just to the north of it that I think the heaviest snows are going to fall. Now let's go take a closer look at what that's going to look like by going to our multi-model analysis. And we're starting first with the NAM model. Now you're going to see here the clipper here coming out of Alberta, going into Saskatchewan, into Manitoba, and then getting here into Ontario. That's the setup. It leaves a front. See it right in through here? Where all along this front, initially there's a lot of warm air curling around this high, bringing in that moisture and starting off as rain. But in the overnight hours on Tuesday, the Arctic high slides in, pushing the surface temperatures well below freezing. You're going to start to see a corridor of ice showing up here in pink. Light snow on the backside, heavy snow in through this area. This is 1 a.m. Wednesday, playing through the early morning hours Wednesday, midday Wednesday, getting out to Wednesday evening. Now you see that? There's actually no closed isobars around a low. This is all deformation running over a front that's being built for us here. And there could be ice stretching from Texas all the way through the Ohio River Valley into the northeast. That's one model. Let's now take a look at the dual kind of setup here with the GFS and the European. So we've already seen, there's the clipper. It goes straight into the Hudson Bay and leaves the front. There it is in the GFS, there it is in the European. Very, very similar setup. This is through midnight, Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. There's Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, and Wednesday evening. That's the first push right in through here. It's well established in both models. The pink, remember, that's where the models are predicting ice. And what we see is there's a second wave. See it coming in here? This is now midnight on Thursday morning, Thursday morning at 6 a.m., getting to noon. There's that second push of heavy snow coming through this area. And the GFS is more aggressive on the snow coming through New Mexico and Texas compared to the European. But still, Thursday evening, getting into Friday early in the morning here, this presses into New England. Cold, very cold air coming on the back side of this. And as we play this on out, that front clears by Saturday. Now, that takes you out 5 days from now. That was quick, but that's what we're watching. What we see coming in behind it, another clipper in both models, spreading some light snow back into this area, all right? But the GFS is aggressive on bringing another short wave out of this pattern, out of the lower Mississippi River Valley, which, by the way, through this whole time period, I know I was looking at the snow, this area sees thunderstorms and maybe 1 to 4 inches of rain, very heavy rainfall from eastern Texas over to this part of Mississippi and Alabama. But we're going to see if the GFS actually has this right, developing this system farther to the north this weekend than what the European does. At this point, the disagreement makes it quite difficult to tell you how we're going to pin this next system down, so I'll cover it in Thursday's video. Now, let's look at this from a multi-model perspective. This is the European model snowfall totals. There's going to be some trouble with the models predicting the changeover from rain to freezing rain, sleet, and snow. There's also going to be some trouble right here along, I'll just draw a line here, right here along this area and south, where that changeover is going to make this 10-to-1 snow ratio irrelevant. We could get much lower liquid to snow ratio values south of that line, okay? Now, this is the Europeans' placement of the heaviest snow. Let's just go see what the GFS suggests. Almost identical, just a little bit farther to the south. Very good. We could say, what is the NAM? That's the North American Mesoscale model. That's its projection of where the heavy snow is going to be. And let's even go take a look at Germany's ICON model. That's where it's got the heaviest snow. And again, this continues into New England. Let's take a very quick look at that. Let's go back to the GFS, and I'll just switch the perspective over to the east. And again, we're going to watch here. Like, let's go back to the 12Z run. Let's just play this forward. Look at that. There's the potential for very heavy snow to overrun that deformation zone into the interior parts of New England and this part of Ontario and Quebec. Coming back to the central region, I want to show you the potential on ice. This is what I'm very concerned about. This whole region, if you're in this area, please just be prepared for the potential for ice that could accumulate under the snow that's going to fall later, but we could have some very large ice accumulation amounts that could easily get in excess of 1/4 of an inch. So that's it. That's what we're going to watch very, very carefully. Now, moving on, where does the pattern end up? By February 10th, we get this kind of almost omega look to the flow pattern, which means through February 10th, the MJO Phase 3 has yet to influence that ridge to pull it back in this direction. So the flow comes around like that, comes around the base of this trough. And what you end up getting in through here is convergent flow. And unfortunately, that's drier for the west. And that's a little bit drier than average through the Ohio River Valley, although I think this is overdone on the drier side of things. We'll be wet from Texas, southern Texas along the Gulf Coast at the base of that trough. But I think we're going to see more active systems again coming through this first 15 days of February into the Ohio River Valley. We've got to get the MJO Phase 3 to back the ridge up to get rid of this. That ridge has got to move to the west. All right, temperatures, and we'll wrap this one up. When we look at the temperatures today on Monday, just a blowtorch in the midsection of the country. Compared to average, we're talking 20 to 30 degrees warmer than normal. By Tuesday, though, the Arctic air is advancing. The warm sector opens here, bringing in the moisture. That's then replaced by this Arctic air on Wednesday, and by Thursday advances east. So we went from 60s approaching 70 down into the teens for highs here on Thursday in Texas. And as we go forward into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we do get a warm-up back in this area and some downslope flow. From there, I would like to show you the day 5 through 10 pattern from the GFS. Why we've got the cold bias in through here is because the models have snow on the ground. So they're biasing the surface temperatures colder in that area. But you can see the effect of the downslope winds here coming off the mountains, making it more mild. The models do not agree on this. This is day 10 through 15 from the GFS. This is day 10 through 15 from the ECMWF. Much more mild as the models finally tried to bring the ridge back, giving us a flow setup that's doing something a bit more like opening up to some warmth in this area. That we're going to have to watch very carefully. One thing I do know, the polar vortex is very strong right now and very steady. Just to show you how strong it is, the current value forecast values are to be up here. near the strongest the vortex has been versus a year ago when it was down here. So we'll keep watching it. We'll report again on Thursday, okay? Thanks.